Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Quantum Exponential Group PLC investor presentation. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted any time using the Q&A tab on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard and will notify you by email when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and if you'd be so kind as to give that your attention, I'm sure that would be greatly welcomed by the company. And I'd now like to hand over to Martin Schwiedler, CEO from Quantum. Good afternoon, sir.
Mark, thank you very much for the intro. Good afternoon, everyone. We are very excited to be here on the show. Martin Schwiedler, CEO of Quantum Exponential Group PLC. I've been in the industry for the last 25, 27 years, mostly in M&A and private equity around the world, London, New York, Frankfurt, Vienna, Moscow. I'm here together with Stuart Nicol. He's our Chief Investment Officer, and we're going to go through the presentation jointly. If I start off with the introduction, basically, quantum technology is an exciting new technology which has been in university labs being researched for the last 30 years, and only 2 years ago, or it has come out of the box and has hit the commercial world. Governments have been investing heavily into the technology, as have the big tech companies around the world. Just a few statements here on that. And the CEO of Google recently said in an interview with BBC, there will be two disruptive technologies over the next 25 years on this world, which will be artificial intelligence and quantum technology. Chancellor Sunak recently said in his budget speech for 2022 that quantum technology will be one of the investment highlights and one of the investment focuses of the UK. The EU has recently put billions of funding for quantum technology onto the budget of their member states. Biden administration recently held a conference on quantum technology together with all the tech companies. So you can see it's an immense there's an immense boom and an immense drive into that technology. However, it's a very young technology. It has been very recently coming to the commercial arena, and it's a very complex technology. So for investors to make the right decision, choose the right company, it's going to be very difficult. Therefore, we have created Quantum Technology, Quantum Exponential PLC, to create the first listed entity, which is a pure play investor into quantum technology, which will give the investor the opportunity to put money into a portfolio approach, and it's a listed company, so they can trade in and out of the company as they want. What else do you need for making the right decisions? You need the right people to take a decision on which company you want to invest in, where do you find the companies, how do you breed the companies, and where and when do you sell these companies. We have assembled an amazing board and an amazing advisory panel, which come from various backgrounds. We have quantum scientists on there. We have the best venture capital people on there. We have the best quantum patent lawyer. We have entrepreneurs, and we have private equity people on there. So I think we can cover this very complex technology very well. We listed recently on Acquiz, raised £5.3 million, and have made our first investments in that area. We're looking into two other investments, which we will go through later through Stuart. Our first investment was into Arcade Quantum Inc., which recently spun itself into a SPAC on Nasdaq. It had an amazing performance. It's trading at $35 at the moment, which gives us a capital gain on our on the shares we will own in the future of about $7 million. So this is an amazing first investment for us, and gives us a huge boost. And obviously, it means quite a lot also to our funding plans, etc. Stuart, please.
Thanks, Martin. Morning, everyone. As Martin said, I'm Stuart Nicol. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Quantum Exponential Group PLC. I got here via 20-odd years in venture capital, working for a number of different firms, the ones you've probably heard of now, Octopus Investments, and I was also the first external director at Crowdcube. Prior to that, I did a Master's in Finance at London Business School, and before that, I was in the British Army as an infantry officer. Generally, over the last 20 years, I've tried to work with high growth, high potential companies who are also, by doing what they do in a commercial way, make good profits and also do good for society as well. And that's one of the things that really drew me into the rapid advancements in quantum that we're seeing, and in working to create this fund. So you'll see from the slides, I'm not going to run through them in detail. As Martin mentioned, there's a lot more investments been happening in quantum recently, and there's a lot more that's going to happen. And we're particularly interested in those opportunities from universities, which can now be commercialized as we take them to products that use quantum manipulation and quantum effects. Thank you. So just to look at some of these, and maybe just to step back a little bit, in the same way as most people don't understand how the internal combustion engine works, most people don't understand how computers work, and therefore I'm not about to try and explain quantum for you in this meeting. There are some great resources out there which we can provide to give you a simple idea. But if we, rather than thinking quantum computing is going to take over all computing, it's probably better to think of it that quantum computing is way better at doing certain calculations, so especially probability-based ones, than traditional computing. And it can get to a more accurate answer far quicker, using far less energy, and with far greater level of confidence. So we get better results from less efforts. And to give you an example of that, traditional computers are very poor at transport matrices. So if I want to go to A to B to C via D, E, and F, they find that very time-consuming and difficult to do. Whereas because of the way things work at the quantum level, that's a very easy thing to do, or will be a very easy thing to do when quantum computers come around. But we've got a relatively small fund at the moment. Any quantum computers are expensive. There's massive companies looking at that area, so we're not about to finance a quantum computer company from sort of inception with a significant amount of our own funds. Rather, we're looking around the fringes, things like quantum repeaters, which can speed up the interaction of quantum computers in the future, or software which can actually help them do useful things. We're looking at quantum communications. Similarly, we're not about to finance the quantum internet, but there may well be things that we can do to sort of, to use the picks and shovels analogy, things around the fringes which we can get a reasonable stake in, we can give a good amount of assistance to, and we can make a good return on. Similarly, in measurements, that is able to be much more accurate now, and especially I think in sensing, we're seeing a lot of deal flow in this area, which is something that, together with grants and other co-investors, we can achieve meaningful valuation progress and get them to market sooner than maybe some of the others.
Yeah, our vision. I mean, we are a very early adopter in this exciting technology, and our aim is going to be to become one of the leading institutions shaping the quantum technology industry going forward. And as a mission, investing in quantum technology in order to profit from the progress of the technology. Stuart, yeah.
Thanks. The process we're using for finding deals and selecting them are the same as any venture capitalist would do. We've been able to source strong deal flow via our advisory board and entrepreneurs doing what they do and being creative in finding out sources of money and knowledge. We also work fairly closely with Notion Capital, which is an established mostly B2B software investor in UK and Europe. When we come to the selection, again, we run through a significant amount of due diligence, present it to our advisory board who have broad skills and talents, and then part of my experience in venture capital, and I'm a mentor with a lot of entrepreneurs at the Royal Academy of Engineering, is working out pre-investment, and then with the investment, how can we really assist this company beyond just the funding? Can we make sure that the valuation uplift happens as with the greatest level of certainty, and they're prepared for a good exit, which would typically be a trade sale.
Coming to our management and to our executive, non-executive board. As Stuart said, we initially now raised a relatively small fund, but the aim is to become one of the big players, and we are already in discussions with the British Business Bank, with EU institutions, with private investor groups to raise relatively large sidecar funds for Quantum Exponential PLC. And therefore, we have created a management and non-executive board which can reflect the future outlook of the company. So we have hired and we have been able to attract Ian Pearson as a chairman to Quantum Exponential, who has been secretary of the governments for many years in different functions. He's been an MP. He's director of Thames Water. So Ian has a huge depth to it and can ensure that the company is run in a very diligent way, that we are adhering to the strategies and to the outsets we have put ourselves up to. Nigel, our other non-executive director, has a huge experience in a lot of industries, has created a massive amount of companies, has grown them, has put them on the stock exchange and been chairman to it. Stuart and I, we have already presented, and Steve Metcalf, our COO and one of the founders of the company, he's been very instrumental with all his knowledge of capital markets and creating companies. He has been and will be a very important part of the team. In respect to the advisory board, which I mentioned before, which I think is going to be hugely important in taking the right investment decisions. We have David Williams here on the top left, who has created Arcid Quantum Inc., the company I talked about. He's a multiple entrepreneur and has done phenomenally well on Arcid, raising this company to a $4 billion company market cap. We have 3 quantum scientists on board with Kai Bongs, Rupert Urzin, and Tariq Ali, who are one of the leaders in quantum science around the world. We have Justin Hill, one of the main patent lawyers in London. Stephen Chandler, who's running Notion Capital, and we talked about it. Then we have Dave Williams and Catherine Courtney, who've both been CEOs of the UK Space Agency and have enormous contacts in this whole arena. And Oliver Cohen, who has an enormous mix of being a quantum scientist, but have been working in commercial environments for the last 20 years. So he has a very good view on what is really science, but what is going to work commercially around the world. Stuart, next slide, please.
Thanks. So we've looked around the whole market as it currently is today to make the point with the more government funding and the interest and the commercialization across quantum at the moment. We expect these number of deals to jump tenfold in the next couple of years and 50-fold thereafter. Plan is to initially do somewhere probably between 6 to 10 investments, and really the funds we've raised so far, the intention is clearly to make money out of doing those investments, but also to help pump prime us and prep us for raising larger funds, either into the PLC or probably more likely as a sidecar. Just to reiterate the point, if it does come in as a sidecar fund, then any fees, etc., will go into the topco, which you'll have invested in as by investing in the PLC. Typically, I think we'll invest about 300K each in seed or pre-seed deals. So the first round of commercializing of these businesses, try and make sure that they get we can see that there'll be a significant valuation uplift within the first 15 months or so, but also more importantly that they've got cash available through us, other investors, government grants. There's quite a lot of government grants in this area. For at least 18 months prior to raising that further funding. Even within that, because of the way the science is developing, the timing will just be wrong for some, or the initial application will be wrong. So those deals we're not going to support them with further investment, but we will the ones who are perhaps more fortunate and the market moves their way. We're already in due diligence with one company, and we're just about to enter due diligence with a second. So here's some examples of some of the deals we've looked at in the past. We are able to invest globally, but we're a small team. It's a relatively small fund. We know UK best, and we're more likely to do the bulk of our initial investments in the UK. When we have larger funds, I'll be slightly dictated by the significant investors of those funds, but we'd expect them to all be, in countries sort of allied to NATO and in countries where we have some form of advantage, be it an introduction from one of our advisors and therefore somebody we trust, or being brought in to co-invest alongside another investor we trust, something like that. We're not going to blunder into countries because typically that would mean we're probably doing the wrong deals then.
Yeah, to sum up the presentation, I think there are a few points we carried across. It's a very, very exciting new technology which will change the world. But it's a very complex and a very new technology. So you have to be very diligent in how to approach it. We are a very early adopter. We've raised a small amount of money so far, but the aim is to grow it into a significant fund going forward. With all what we said before on acting with British Business Bank, EU money, with private investor money, etc. We are the only venture capital fund which has a pure play quantum focus and is publicly listed. So we give the investor the opportunity to have a pure play portfolio approach on quantum and trade in and out of the company. We have an amazing team which we presented, and we have made an incredible progress over the last 12 months in raising the funds, putting up the team, making the first investments, selecting and then screening so many companies. So we've been very, very busy, but it is only the start for us now, and we're very excited to go into the next phase of our development and get you guys on board as investors. And if you're on board already, to grow the company and the market cap accordingly, and get some good investments onto our company. It was great presenting. Thank you very much, and over to you, Mark.
That's great, Martin. Stuart, thank you so much for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Martin and Stuart take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides, will be published on the Investor Meet Company dashboard. Your investment company dashboard will notify you by email when it's ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and immediately after this presentation has ended, we'll redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order the company can really better understand your views and expectations. Martin, Stuart, you've received a number of questions throughout today's meeting, and we also received a number ahead of today's meeting. So perhaps if I may start the Q&A off with the following question. What is quantum technology used for?
Stuart?
Yeah, thanks. So what I guess we should say what we hope it's going to be used for. Quantum computers aren't that useful at the moment, but they are expected to be so. And then there'll be a range of opportunities and threats. So opportunities will be in areas such as being able to better analyze drugs to potentially take them to market quicker or more cheaply. Threats can be in the form of cyber security threats. So basically, using a quantum computer, you'll be much more able to crack the current algorithms that protect our communication. And there are a number of companies countering that, including Arcit. So that we're expecting there's going to be a significant change in security to make sure that security protects itself as best as possible via such attacks via future capable quantum computers. And there's a risk even today that if somebody starts holding and storing the currently encrypted information, then in 5 years' time, when the technology is available, then they will be able to crack the historic information, which could be very valuable to an enemy.
But just a quick thing from my end here. Recently, the chief quantum scientist of China quoted that his or their quantum computer was able to resolve a very complex mathematical task calculation in 72 hours, where the fastest supercomputer in the world would have taken 8 years to resolve it. So you can see the quantum leaps we're taking here, and that's still early days.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Just another question really around kind of merging a couple of questions really. Why is quantum technology so important, and really how does it impact the everyday person?
Okay, so I think you'll see, but may not notice improvements in how your communication is encrypted. In time, you should see improvements in how some goods and products are produced, because especially if there's like a chemical reaction, then quantum computers can help better simulate that chemical reaction. So again, it gets more efficient. There are some quantum computing capabilities on smartphones today. So I think it'll probably happen with most people not really noticing it. It'll sit in the background. People aren't going to swap their laptops for a quantum computer. These are, initially will be things that are held centrally, and hopefully with people, as you can do now, able to tap into the quantum computer to do the calculations and get the outcomes they want. But again, that's likely to be, either academics, ardent hobbyists, or commercial firms doing that.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Turning to the next question, what strategies do you choose to use, and what do you look to invest in?
Okay, so I think we're and I noticed one of the questions in the chat is how competitive are the opportunities shown to us. So initially, as a small fund, we're seeing that the deals within the Golden Triangle, Oxford, Cambridge, London, are being picked up quite quickly by others with deeper pockets than us. So we are tending to fish in the more universities and commercializing in the provinces. So Bristol, Birmingham, Scotland, those kind of areas. Sorry, could you just repeat the rest of the question?
Yes, of course. Just bear with me. Let me just bring that question back for you. Where has it gone? Yeah. What strategies do you use to choose who / what you invest in? And as Michael said, how competitive is that general process?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there's a standard and fairly lengthy due diligence process that venture capitalists go through to selecting the deals. You're looking at the team's backgrounds, the nature of the market opportunity, the likely ability to commercialize, the margin they might command, the intellectual property, etc. So that this, it takes a few months at least. And we're also looking, we don't want all of these companies to be so far away from revenue that they could put us at risk if the sector slows down at all. So we want a mix of some earlier stage, closer to commercial opportunities, and some later ones to get a sort of blend of portfolio to ensure the best risk return for our investors. Whilst my main focus is on seed and early stage, like the first institutional investment into the company, because we're quoted and because of our structure, we are able to be a bit more alive to other opportunities. So, for example, if somebody in a highly valued quantum firm wanted to sell some of their stock, then we would be able to acquire that stock, a significant discount to reflect the liquidity difference, and that there aren't many buyers for that kind of stock available. But that's in contrast to most venture funds. They tend to have funds which only allow them to invest in new shares. So some of those opportunities should come up as well.
That's great. And just probably extending slightly on the initial question, when choosing these investments, what is your timeline, and are you looking for short, medium, or long term as a preference?
Again, it's a blend of risk versus opportunity versus how that rest of the portfolio builds up. So if we ended up initially doing 2 deals that we thought were great but had a 7-8 year time horizon, then I would probably be looking more actively to find some with an earlier time horizon to exit in order to balance that out. And just to go back again to how competitive it is, I mean, because these deals take a long time, and there aren't that many investors, looking intently and with cash in this market, then it tends to be there's a lot of co-investing at the moment. So let's say there's a deal that wants 750K. Well, probably at the moment, 3 or 4 investors will come together. That maybe 1 or 2 expert business angels and a couple of ourselves and other small funds.
That's great. Next question we kind of received was around the advisory board, and how will the advisory board help you with picking which countries to invest in, and really what is their day-to-day and activities, and how will they support you going onwards?
Yeah, so day to day, they have jobs of their own, but we're in touch with them, regularly by email. We typically speak to them once a month, and then the whole advisory board comes together once a quarter for a session to share knowledge and find out how we're doing. But they are. They all have shares in Quantum Exponential. They're all committed to quantum as a sector, So they're kind of leaning in as best they can.
Thank you very much indeed. Next question reads as follows: what is the nature of your relationship with Notion Capital?
So Notion Capital is an investor in Quantum Exponential, and whilst typically they invest in software as a service businesses, of which there will be some as the software from Quantum emerges, they also have, I think you term it a discovery fund, where they're able to write relatively small checks, which is a bit of an anachronism, but anyway, that's how it's said, into a wide range of companies that they think might just transition to being companies they want to invest, £3 to £7 million in at the next stage. So doing that, we get to see their network, we get to share ideas with their teams, and knowing that Notion are likely to come into these companies at the next stage also gives us some confidence that the funds are less likely to run out.
That's great, thank you. The option with Arkit, what is the option, and will you exercise it?
Shall I take that, Stuart? Basically, the option had two conditions precedents on it. First one was that we list at a certain time at a certain price, which we have fulfilled, and the other condition is for us to convert into shares. That the lockup expires, and the lockup is in theory another 12 months, but could be shorter depending on the share price of Arkit and how long it will move within this share price. Then the lockup could be shorter, but otherwise we can, as soon as that condition has expired, we can convert the options into shares and can sell at any time. And as I said, we are sitting on an amazing $7 million of capital gain here, which is just really amazing for us.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Helium have an 8.7% holding, and Oberon, who floated you, have a 4.57%, but they're the only declarable holders. Are you planning on increasing your institutional shareholder base?
Look, I mean, there's another question to that matter from Steve. How do you feel that you will increase liquidity in stock and Aquis in general? Basically, as we said, I mean, we are a small fund. We tapped mostly the private high net worth individual market to raise funds, and some of them of the institutionals. We now have to prove our concept. We have to make good on our promise to deliver investments and to grow the company. And as soon as we do that, we will go more actively to the retail market, because we think it's going to be very attractive to retail to invest into us, because obviously of the portfolio approach and the pure play we are offering, and as larger we are getting, the more institutional investors we will get onto the fund. Obviously, most of the institutions are not interested in such a small scale. As soon as we scale it up, there are going to be a lot more institutions looking at us.
That's great. Thank you, Martin. And thank you for spotting that question had come in the live event as well. Michael D, I think we've addressed your question around how competitive the opportunities that the company has shown. Turning to a question, if I may, from Harmish. Harmish, thank you for your question. Reads as follows: will you look to cross over onto AIM at some point?
Look, I mean, nothing we have to discuss right now. As I said before, we're very happy with Aquis at the moment. It's a growth market. It's for early stage companies. We have to prove our concept and deliver on the promise, and then we decide whatever we do. But we are very happy at Aquis, and I think it's on us to deliver. And we have a lot of support from the stock exchange right now from Aquis. So there's no plan for the moment to do anything like that. First, we deliver.
Thank you. Turning to Steve H. Thank you, Steve, for your question. Do you see regulations being imposed given the potential level of threat?
Stuart, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to take that to mean if quantum computing gets in the wrong hands, then how are governments going to respond? I don't really know the answer to that yet. I don't think anybody does. I mean, we do know there are ways to make communications quantum secure. So I think people are working on that first, and I think regulations in these markets to try and defend against the threat are really hard to achieve because things are moving so quickly. So I suspect it will be, by other means rather than the government trying to do anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, just to add on to this, basically, as soon as any quantum company reaches over into defense, it obviously becomes an issue, and governments will protect themselves. So there will be EU regulations, there will be UK, US regulations, etc. So it's not going to be so easy for a company based in Switzerland doing quantum defense to get an accreditation into the EU to sell the products there. So there will be some kind of obviously regulations and restrictions, but companies have to work around that as they have done over a long period of time.
That's great. Thank you. And if I could just remind investors on the call, if there are any further questions as we're coming up potentially to the last submitted question from Charles, if you want to continue to put your questions in, please do so. As I say, Charles, thank you for your question. This is from Charles G. What is your view on yesterday's tie-up between Honeywell and Cambridge Quantum, renamed Quantinium?
Yeah, I think there's there's been a lot of axis and profile of a number of funds floating, raising significant amounts of money, merging, etc. I think that's good news for the industry and the sector as it comes to the commercialization point. From where we're sitting now, these are significant, large, well-funded entities, and it's not really my focus. My focus is in speaking to the academics in some of the labs and the universities around the country and seeing how they're going to spin their opportunities out and how maybe Quantinium or others might become potential customers. But it's not something I focus too much on. We've got our own strategy to follow, and it's easy to get distracted.
That's great. Well, look, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to all the investors that have taken time to submit questions ahead of today's event and during the live event itself. Perhaps I know investor feedback is important to you guys, and I'll shortly redirect investors to give you their thoughts and expectations. But before doing so, if I may, Martin, could I hand back to you just for a few closing comments to wrap up with?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, obviously, we've been on a ride over the last year to create Quantum Exponential, which has been a very, very exciting ride. We've taken our first hurdle with going public 1st of November, raising the 5.3 million pounds, and doing our first investment with Arcade Quantum Inc., which will deliver a big capital gain to us. At the moment, we're standing at $7 million, but there's a lot of work and a lot of excitement in front of us. Stuart will go out and do hopefully a lot of investments over the next few months, and has a big list of opportunities in front of him. We are talking to a lot of potential investors and state institutions to create a bigger sidecar funds in the range of 70 to 100 million each. We will raise more money on the PLC level as soon as we have proven our concept, and we want to attract the retail market to our platform. I think it's an ideal investment opportunity for retail investors, and we'll get the institutional funds onto us as soon as we are larger and then have proven the concept. So stay with us, support us. We're going to work very, very hard to deliver on our promises.
That's great. Martin, Stuart, thank you once again for updating investors today. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can really better understand your views and expectations. On behalf of the management team of Quantum Exponential Group, we'd like to thank you today for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Cheers.
Thanks for